Willow Summers had exactly 10 seconds to decide whether to run or bluff her way into the most exclusive black-tie gala in Manhattan, and she chose chaos. "I'm with catering," she blurted to the stone-faced man at the back entrance, gripping the tray of champagne she'd swiped off a distracted server's cart. Her fake smile trembled with nerves. The man barely glanced at her. "You're late. Ballrooms through that hallway." She exhaled in disbelief. It worked. Moments later, the grandeur of the ballroom hit her like a wave of heat. Gold-draped ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet in tuxedos. This was a different universe. A universe of backless gowns, diamond necklaces, and suits that probably cost more than her entire student loan debt. Willow didn't belong here. At all. But she had no choice. She needed to find her sister. Brooke had called crying 2 hours ago, saying she was in trouble, really bad trouble, and then the line went dead. The only clue Willow had was a location tag Brooke had shared before the call, the Darlington Foundation Gala. She weaved between tables trying to blend in, tray still in hand. Her second-hand heels pinched with every step. Her black dress borrowed from her roommate was elegant enough to pass, but the anxiety crawling up her spine was harder to hide. Then she saw him. Not her sister. Him. At the center of a circle of laughter stood a man in a midnight tuxedo, a glass of whiskey in hand, his presence towering even without saying a word. His sharp jawline, tousled dark hair, and piercing blue eyes made him look like he stepped out of a billionaire bachelor magazine. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way people turned toward him like planets orbiting a sun. Willow froze. Her heel caught on the edge of a rug. Her tray tilted. Champagne flutes wobbled. And then disaster. She stumbled forward, arms flailing, and crashed straight into the man. The tray clattered to the ground, champagne soaking his jacket and shirt. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. A gasp echoed through the ballroom. "I'm so." Her voice cracked as she looked up, expecting fury. Instead, she met the warmest eyes she'd ever seen. Strong arms wrapped around her instinctively, steadying her before she could fall. "Easy," he said, his voice low and calm, like everything around them hadn't just stopped breathing. Willow blinked. "You're not mad?" "Only if you tell me you did this on purpose just to get my attention," he said, one brow raised. A soft chuckle escaped her before she could stop it. Would that actually work? It just did. Laughter burst from the crowd, then applause. The tension melted as quickly as it had formed. The man still holding her tilted his head slightly. "I'm Weston Decker," he said. "And you are?" Oh no. She'd crashed Weston Decker's gala. The Weston Decker, millionaire tech mogul, owner of Decker Innovations, Forbes cover darling, the man whose net worth had more commas than her entire family tree. Willow," she said, cheeks burning. "Willow Summers." "Willow," he repeated, still not letting go of her. "You sure you're not one of the performers tonight? Because that was quite the entrance." She gave him a nervous laugh, pulling away gently. "I'm really sorry. I shouldn't even be here. Weston." A man in a silver suit hustled over, glaring at her. "She's not staff. I don't recognize her." Willow's heart slammed against her ribs. Weston held up a hand. "She's my guest." The man blinked. "Your guest?" "That's right," Weston said smoothly, slipping an arm around her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. "She just arrived late." "Come on, Willow. I'll get you a fresh drink." She stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He leaned closer, voice low enough only she could hear. "Because you look like you're about 10 seconds from bolting, and I want to know why." He guided her across the ballroom before she could protest, stopping at a corner with a small private bar. He handed her a new glass of champagne and leaned against the counter. "You're not really here for the party," he said, watching her closely. Willow hesitated. "I'm looking for someone. My sister, Brooke." She called me from this location, said she was in trouble. His expression shifted. Trouble how? I don't know, she said, panic rising again. She's not picking up. She was working for one of the vendors' floral design, I think. She said something felt off about the event. Then she hung up. Weston's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and spoke into it. I need a full list of tonight's vendors. Cross-reference with the name Willow Summers. Now. Willow's eyes widened. You're seriously helping me? I don't like secrets at my own events, he said. And I don't like the look in your eyes. Let's find your sister. She stared at him. Thank you. He shrugged, casual but kind. Besides, I'm not letting you disappear before I get to know the woman who crashed my gala and landed in my arms like it was fate. Willow flushed, but before she could respond, a woman in a headset rushed over. Mr. Decker, we found her. Willow Summers is in the security room. One of the guards caught her trying to sneak into the private corridor. She said she had to talk to someone about something urgent. Willow exhaled. Relief flooded her. Weston held out a hand. Come on. He led her through staff-only doors, past velvet curtains and security checkpoints, until they reached a room where Brooke sat on a bench, eyes red but defiant. Willow, she jumped up, hugging her tightly. What happened? Willow asked. Brooke looked between the sisters and Weston. I overheard something. Two men talking about moving money, illegal transfers. They were using the flower trucks to smuggle something out. I didn't know what to do. I tried to record them, but then someone saw me. Weston's expression hardened. You got a name? Brooke nodded. One of them worked for the event planner. Weston turned to one of his guards. Get the head of security. I want everyone involved detained until we sort this out. He looked back at Willow. You helped stop a crime ring at my gala. That deserves dinner. Willow blinked. Dinner? A real one. Not stolen champagne and panic. Come with me tomorrow night. No crashing necessary. She hesitated. Are you always this calm when someone spills liquor on your suit? He grinned. Only when it comes with a smile like yours. She laughed, the tension finally breaking. Maybe her night hadn't gone as planned, but somehow she'd ended up in the arms of a millionaire with a dinner date in her future. And that was only the beginning. The next evening, Willow stood in front of a glossy black SUV that had pulled up outside her apartment building in the Lower East Side. The driver, dressed in a slate gray uniform and cap, had stepped out and opened the door for her like she was royalty. Behind the tinted windows of the car, a world she didn't understand but had somehow stepped into waited. Inside, the leather seats were soft enough to melt into, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. It smelled like cedarwood and something even more expensive underneath. She had no idea where they were going. Weston hadn't told her only that he'd send a car, and she should wear something she felt amazing in. She'd spent 2 hours second-guessing her choice before settling on a sleek, deep navy dress that her roommate had insisted she wear with heels that made her legs look endless and her feet scream in protest. The car slowed after a half hour, and when the driver opened the door again, Willow stepped out into a world made of glass and skyline. They were on top of a skyscraper. The rooftop had been transformed into a dining experience that belonged in a dream. Low-hanging lights crisscrossed above a long table set for two. Beyond the glass railing, the city glittered in every direction. Heat lamps cast a golden glow, and a string quartet played softly in the far corner, dressed in black and silver. Weston stood with his back to her, facing the skyline, one hand in his pocket. He turned at her footsteps, and something in his expression shifted the moment he saw her. You clean up well, he said, taking her in. I didn't know rooftop palaces were an option, she replied, stepping toward him. Is this your building? He gave a small nod. One of them. She raised an eyebrow. Of course it is. He pulled out her chair with a gallant ease that made her suspicious. "You're used to this." He tilted his head. "Used to what?" "Making girls feel like they accidentally wandered into a fairy tale." "I don't usually bring anyone here," he said, settling across from her. "But then again, most people don't crash my events and stop criminal activity in the same night." A waiter in a white jacket approached, wordless and efficient, pouring wine into their glasses. Another followed with plates of seared scallops and roasted beet salad. Willow stared at the food, then at Weston. "You didn't think this would be intimidating at all?" "I figured we'd start with a little intimidation," he said, slicing into his scallop. "Then work our way down to normal." "Do you even have a normal setting?" He paused, then set down his fork. "Not really. I built my company from scratch. I was 22 and living in a studio above a laundromat. Now I run a team of over 4,000 people across 3 continents. Normal isn't something I've had in a while." She sipped her wine, watching him. "You don't sound proud. You sound tired." He met her gaze. "Success is loud, but loneliness is quiet. I got good at ignoring the quiet." She lowered her glass. "Is that why you helped me last night?" "Because the quiet got too loud." His answer came slower. "I didn't help you because I was bored. I helped you because you looked like you weren't going to ask anyone else. And because I had a feeling I'd regret it if I didn't." She leaned back. "So, it wasn't the champagne down your shirt that won you over?" "That definitely earned points." They both laughed, the tension easing between them. After dinner, he led her to the edge of the rooftop, where the city stretched endlessly. She leaned on the glass railing, wind tugging at her hair. Weston stepped beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "You ever think about leaving all this?" she asked suddenly. He looked at her. "Leaving what?" "The money. The buildings. Everything that makes you Weston Decker." He was quiet for a beat. "I used to. But then I realized I built all this to prove something to people who don't even matter anymore. And now I don't know what I'd be without it." She turned to face him fully. "You'd still be the guy who dragged a stranger out of a crisis and made her laugh 24 hours later." He studied her. "You talk like you've had to start from scratch before." "I have," she said. "More than once. My dad left when I was 14. My mom worked nights to keep us in our apartment. Brooke and I figured out survival early. You learn how to keep moving forward even when it feels like the ground's dropping out from under you." His expression darkened slightly. "You shouldn't have had to." "No one should. But we did. And now she's safe, and I'm on a rooftop with the most unexpected man I've ever met, so I guess things balance out." She didn't realize how close he'd moved until he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're not what I expected either," he said. "I'm not trying to be," she whispered. "I know." His fingers lingered for a moment. "That's why I can't stop thinking about you." The words hit her like a warm current, pulling her toward him. For a moment, she forgot how wildly different their worlds were. There was only the way his eyes locked on hers, as if they were the only 2 people in the sky. But before she could answer, a phone buzzed. Weston's. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "I have to take this. Give me 2 minutes." She nodded, and he stepped away, his voice low as he disappeared behind a glass wall. She turned back to the view, heart racing, breath unsteady. Everything about tonight felt like teetering on a ledge, beautiful, dangerous, thrilling. But when she glanced back toward the glass wall, Weston was no longer there. The door was open, and something in the pit of her stomach twisted. Because a man in a gray coat had just stepped onto the rooftop, his eyes sharp, his movements deliberate. He didn't belong here. And Willow had seen him once before last night, slipping out of the hallway where Brooke had been found. Only this time, the man wasn't alone. He was holding something in his hand. Something metallic. and Willow's instinct screamed that this perfect evening was about to shatter. Willow didn't hesitate. The moment her eyes locked on the man in the gray coat, she stepped backward slowly, her heel brushing against the base of a heat lamp. He was scanning the rooftop, his jaw tight, his hand clenched around the pistol he thought no one had seen. But she had. She glanced toward the glass wall Weston had disappeared behind. The door was still ajar, but he wasn't visible. The man started walking toward the table. Her table. She reached for her clutch, fingers fumbling for her phone. But before she could make a sound, the man stopped and spoke, his voice low but clear. "Where is he?" Her heart pounded in her ears.
"Who?" "Don't play dumb," he said.
"Weston Decker. He was supposed to be here." Her voice caught in her throat, but she forced herself to stay steady. He stepped away. The man's mouth twisted in frustration. Of course he did. He turned his head slightly, listening to something. An earpiece, barely visible against his skin. Willow's mind raced. She had no weapon. No way to call for help without drawing attention. The rooftop was silent except for the soft music from the quartet, who hadn't yet noticed the shift in atmosphere.
She needed to buy time. "You were at the gala," she said.
"You followed my sister." That got his attention. His head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. "You're the florist's sister." She nodded once. "I should have known you'd be a problem." Before she could answer, a dark blur came from behind the glass wall. Weston moved like a storm, fast and silent. In one motion, he tackled the man from behind, sending both of them crashing into the side of the table. Dishes shattered. The violinists froze mid-note. The gun skidded across the floor. Willow dove for it. Her fingers closed over cold metal just as Weston pinned the man's arm behind his back. "Call security," Weston barked over his shoulder. The quartet scrambled, one of them pulling out a phone. The man thrashed violently, but Weston didn't let go. His voice was calm, but every muscle in his body was straining with focused rage. "You think you can walk into my building and threaten someone under my protection?" The man snarled. "You think any of this is over? You're in deeper than you know, Decker." Weston's grip didn't waver. "Then you'll have to explain that to the police." Within minutes, 2 armed guards emerged from a stairwell, followed by a suited man carrying a secure case. Weston handed the attacker over without a word, then turned to Willow. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still holding the gun, her hands trembling slightly. "I didn't know what else to do." "You did exactly what you had to." She looked down at the pistol, then quickly set it back on the table. "Who was he?" Weston exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "I don't know yet. But I've had threats before. Not like this. Not this personal." Her eyes searched his. "What were they after?" "Not just money. Leverage."
He paused.
"You." The word hit her like cold water. "They must have seen us last night," he continued. "Realized you were close to what Brooke overheard. Maybe they thought you had something."
"I don't," she said.
"Not unless they're after my ability to spill drinks in dramatic fashion." He didn't smile. "This isn't just about a gala anymore." Brooke stumbled onto something bigger. Financial laundering through vendor networks isn't small-time stuff. Someone's trying to hide something massive using my platforms. Willow's stomach turned. "Are you saying your company is being used to move illegal money?" "I'm saying someone's trying to make it look that way." Weston turned toward the guards. "Find out who let him in. I want a complete sweep of every security clearance from the last 72 hours. Then he looked back at her, his voice softer. "Come with me." She followed him through a private elevator to a lower floor. The doors opened into a penthouse suite that overlooked the skyline from floor to ceiling windows. Everything was sleek, dark wood and glass, but the space didn't feel cold. There were signs of life. A half-read book on the coffee table. A piano beneath the far window. A painting on the wall that looked hand-painted. "This is your home," she said, surprised. He nodded. One of them. He poured her a glass of water from a crystal decanter and sat beside her on the couch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She glanced at him. You didn't flinch when you tackled him. I've had
training, he said.
When you run a company with high-level government contracts, they make sure you know more than just code and business plans. She set the glass down. You're not just a millionaire with a nice view and good taste in rooftop lighting. He looked at her then, not with his usual ease, but with something raw.
No, I'm not.
She leaned back against the couch cushions. So what happens now? I dig, he said. I find out who's behind this. I make sure your sister's safe. And I make sure you are too. She turned to face him. You don't have to take responsibility for me, Weston. I got dragged into this by accident. I don't believe in accidents, he said. You crashed into my life at the exact moment someone tried to use it for something dark. That's not coincidence. She hesitated. You're really not letting this go, are you? His voice dropped. Not a chance. The air between them shifted again. Not tense, but close.
Real.
No glittering distractions. No music. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of danger, holding on to something that had started faster than either of them could explain. I don't know what this is, she whispered. But I know I haven't felt like I belong somewhere in a long time. And somehow, I don't feel like I'm pretending when I'm with you. He reached out and gently took her hand. Then stay. She swallowed. Just for tonight? He shook his head. Until this ends. At least. Until I know you're safe. Her voice caught. And after that? His eyes didn't waver. That's up to you. She didn't answer right away. But she didn't let go of his hand either. And outside, the city kept glowing, oblivious to how close they'd both come to losing something they hadn't even known they were looking for. The first rays of morning light filtered through the glass walls, casting long golden streaks across the penthouse floor. Willow stirred on the velvet chaise near the window, still dressed in her navy gown, her hair tousled from sleep. She had meant to stay the night, but Weston hadn't asked her to leave either. Across the room, he stood barefoot in dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, speaking in hushed tones to a man in a slate-gray suit. The conversation ended with a nod, and the man slipped out the door with a purposeful stride. Willow sat up slowly, rubbing her temple. Was that your lawyer? Or your head of security? Weston crossed the room, setting a warm mug of coffee on the table beside her. Both. They overlap more than I'd like. She took the cup, grateful for the smell of roasted beans. I assume it wasn't good news. He sat across from her, resting an ankle over his knee. Depends on how you look at it. We traced the man from last night to an offshore shell company. That company is tied to a holding firm that's been siphoning funds through vendor networks connected to my foundation. She blinked the sleep from her eyes. So, it's someone inside? Someone with access to vendor contracts. We're narrowing it down. But there's more. Weston leaned forward, his eyes sharper. One of the board members has been pushing for a merger with a tech conglomerate I've been resisting. If my name gets dragged through a laundering scandal, I lose majority control, and they get what they want. Willow's stomach tightened. They're trying to destroy your reputation, to force your hand. He nodded once. And they nearly used you to do it. If you hadn't gone looking for Brooke, they might have succeeded. She looked down at the coffee. I didn't stop anything. I just stumbled across it. You stumbled into the middle of something most people would walk away from, he said. You ran toward it. That matters. Before she could answer, the elevator chimed. Brooke stepped out hesitantly, her eyes flicking around the room. She wore jeans and an oversized sweatshirt, but her expression was sharper than the night before. I got the files, she said, holding up a flash drive. Contracts, invoices, payment logs. I copied everything before they shut down my vendor account. Weston stood and took the drive, handing it immediately to a man who had entered behind Brooke, a lean, quiet figure in glasses, and a worn leather messenger bag. "My forensic analyst," Weston explained. "He'll cross-reference everything." Brooke threw herself onto the couch beside Willow. "So, this is your life now? Penthouse views and armed rooftop dinners?" Willow gave her a look. "Not exactly. Could have fooled me," Brooke muttered. "The guy makes danger look like a perfume ad." "Brooke," Weston said without turning, "you're not wrong. But this isn't over yet." The analyst finished scanning the flash drive and looked up. "There's a name that keeps coming up. Mason Kerrigan. He signed off on multiple flower vendor contracts, including yours. He's not on your board, but he's been advising the foundation for over a year." Willow stood slowly. "I saw that name on one of Brooke's invoices. The one she almost didn't submit because the address looked off." Weston's jaw clenched. "He's connected to the firm pushing the merger." Brooke leaned forward. "So what happens now?" Weston glanced at Willow. "Now we make it public. But on my terms." Later that afternoon, Weston stood behind a podium in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of his corporate headquarters. Dozens of reporters filled the seats, cameras flashing, microphones extended. Willow stood off to the side, heart pounding as he began to speak. "In the past 72 hours, we uncovered an attempt to use my philanthropic network to funnel illicit funds through contracted vendors," Weston said, voice clear and controlled. "Thanks to the bravery of 2 women, Willow and Willow Summers, those responsible have been identified and are being prosecuted." He paused, eyes scanning the room. "I built this company from nothing, but I will never sacrifice integrity for profit. Anyone using my foundation for personal gain will be held accountable." The room erupted in questions, but Weston stepped back, letting his legal team take over. Willow met him in the corridor behind the conference room, her pulse still racing. "You just took on your own board in front of half the press in Manhattan." "I didn't build this to let someone else destroy it," he said. "And I wasn't about to let them use you to do it." She stared at him. "You didn't have to say my name." "I wanted to," Weston said. "You didn't crash my gala, Willow. You saved it." "You saved more than that." She opened her mouth to speak, but he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've spent years surrounded by people who want something from me. You didn't ask for anything. You showed up for your sister and ended up standing between me and a full-scale takedown. That's not luck. That's rare." Her chest tightened. "You still don't know what this is between us." He took her hand. "I don't need to label it to know I'm not letting you walk away from it." The hallway behind them cleared. The noise of reporters faded. There was only him, quiet, grounded, real, and her, standing in the middle of a life she hadn't asked for but suddenly couldn't imagine leaving. "You're not afraid of what happens next?" she asked. He shook his head. "I've been afraid for years. Of trusting the wrong people. Of building something so high that one wrong move brings it all crashing down. But I'm not afraid of you." She laughed, breathless. "That's a terrible line." "I wasn't trying to impress you," he said. "I was telling you the truth." She stepped into his arms before she could overthink it. His arms wrapped around her, warm and strong, and for the first time since that night, she let herself exhale fully. The city moved on without them, but they stayed there, in that quiet moment, holding something fragile and fierce. 3 weeks later, the gala was rescheduled. This time, Willow didn't crash it. She walked through the front entrance on Weston's arm, wearing a midnight blue gown chosen for her by a stylist whose name she still couldn't pronounce. Cameras flashed, but she didn't flinch. They dined under crystal chandeliers, danced to violins, and toasted to a future unburdened by secrets.
No chaos.
No lies. Just a woman who'd once stumbled into a world she didn't understand, and the man who'd caught her without hesitation. At the end of the night, Weston leaned in, lips brushing her ear. "You know," he said, "I still remember the first thing you said to me." She smiled. That I was with catering?
I believed you, he said.
But I knew even then you were here for something bigger. Willow turned to face him, her voice steady.
So did I.
And when he kissed her, it wasn't the beginning of something uncertain. It was the continuation of something they were both finally ready to claim. The wind off the Amalfi coast was balmy, scented faintly with lemon blossoms and sea salt. A soft pink hue stretched across the horizon as the sun dipped toward the water, casting golden light on the stone terrace overlooking the cliffs. Willow stood barefoot, her silk gown brushing against her ankles, one hand wrapped loosely around a glass of sparkling water. Behind her, the villa hummed with soft music and quiet laughter drifting from the open doors. Weston appeared beside her, his white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled, his expression more relaxed than she'd ever seen it. There were no phones ringing, no staff interrupting, no looming board meetings or mass threats. Just the whisper of the sea and the man she'd fallen for, real and unguarded. I was starting to think you'd wandered off, he said, resting his hand gently at the small of her back. I wanted to take in a view, she said. It still feels unreal. Like I stepped into someone else's life.
You didn't, he said.
You stepped into yours. This just happens to be where it led. She turned toward him, searching his face. You're sure you're okay with stepping away from everything? Even temporarily? He nodded. I've built teams for a reason. They can keep the world spinning while I take a few weeks to live like a human being. A smile tugged at her lips. And what does living like a human being involve in your world? This, he said, brushing a kiss on her temple. And dinner with your sister and her new boyfriend tomorrow. And letting you drive that ridiculous convertible I bought you even though it terrifies me. She laughed. You mean the one I stalled 3 times trying to back out of the driveway? Exactly that one. She leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his waist, cheek pressed to his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, grounding. Brooke's happier than I've seen her in months, she said. She's finally sleeping through the night. She even said she's thinking about opening her own design studio. She should, Weston said. And if she needs help, she knows how to find me. Willow tilted her head. You already gave her a startup grant, didn't you? She made it very difficult to do it quietly. She would. They stood in silence for a moment, the waves crashing far below as dusk folded over the cliffs. Weston drew back slightly, eyes on hers. There's something I've been meaning to show you. She raised an eyebrow. That's not how proposals usually start. His brow lifted. You think I'm proposing? I think you're about to do something that'll make me cry. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a delicate velvet box. But when he opened it, there wasn't a ring. It was a key. She stared at it, puzzled. It's for the brownstone on Bleecker Street, he said. The one with the ivy and the rooftop garden. I spent the past 2 weeks renovating it. Not for me. For you. For us. If we want it. Her breath caught. I know you're not a woman who wants to be swept away, he said. You want to build something. I want to build it with you. Not just a life, but a home. One we choose. Together. She took the key slowly, her fingers trembling. I never thought I'd have something like this, she whispered. Not just the place, but the choice. You do, he said. Every day. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Then I choose you. Over and over. His arms wrapped around her, and this time, when he kissed her, it was slow and deep and certain. There was no rushing, no urgency. Just the quiet promise of years ahead. They stayed that way until the sky turned indigo and the villa lights glowed behind them. Back inside, Brooke waved from the kitchen, holding a flour-dusted wooden spoon. You two better get in here before I eat all the tiramisu. Willow laughed and tugged Weston's hand. Later, they curled up on a chaise beneath a pergola lit by strings of golden bulbs. Brooke played cards at the table with her boyfriend, Matteo, while Weston traced soft patterns on Willow's back. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't crashed your gala?" she asked quietly. "I think about it all the time," he replied. "And I thank every version of fate that you did." She turned to him, her eyes shining in the low light. "I still don't know if I believe in fate." "Doesn't matter," he said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I believe in you." Her heart ached with how much she loved him. 2 months later, they moved into the brownstone. The garden bloomed with white roses, and the rooftop became their favorite place for morning coffee. Weston commuted less, worked remotely more, and found he didn't miss the noise. Willow opened a design studio with Brooke, and the first client they signed was a foundation project Weston quietly referred their way. They never returned to the lives they had before, because those lives had been half-lives, quiet in all the wrong places. Now there were weekend escapes, late-night laughter, takeout dinners eaten on the floor. There were shared glances across the room that said more than words could. There were fights, of course, about paint colors and whether Weston really needed 4 espresso machines. But there was always love, always forgiveness, always a hand reaching back across the distance. One rainy Sunday, Weston surprised her with a candlelit dinner in the garden.
No speeches. No photographers.
Just them, soaked to the bone, laughing under a broken umbrella. At the end of the night, he pulled out a ring this time. And when he asked, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered, tears lost in the rain. 1,000 times yes. They didn't need a castle or a crown. They'd built their own kingdom. And every day, they chose each other. Not because they had to, but because no other life made sense.